Good job. Good job. Good job. Okay, bounce a little bit. I'm going to hold it.
Look at Cullen Jones up in lane 2, second from the top. Irvin's trying to battle back, 2 below him in lane 4. It is Jones up top in lane 2. Adrian's going to the wall as well, and it's Jones and Irvin 1-2.
A near-drowning experience at the age of 5 has transformed gold medalist Cullen Jones into the 3rd fastest African-American swimmer to make the U.S. Olympic team. But this milestone is rare of its kind, as the absence of black swimmers has become a threatening reality. Is this a fear or an excuse?
I don't swim, not because I didn't want to swim, because I was with my grandparents. I was in rural North Louisiana. There was water out there, but I wasn't going out there. There was snakes in that water. You know what I mean? That's fear. Okay, that's not an excuse. That's fear.
My brother is 10. He still doesn't swim. My sister is about to turn 18, and she's like terrified of water. And then especially after my cousin died, it's like we don't want to go in a pool.
African Americans have a strikingly rich history that dates back to pre-slavery days. But the disconnect between the black community and swimming emerged during the era of the slave trade. Slave owners stripped them of this basic survival skill to prevent a means of escape. These restrictions traveled decades later to the Civil Rights Movement with the enforcement of Jim Crow laws. African Americans were beaten, mocked, and ridiculed for trying to swim in areas intended for whites only.
Swimming was, in my mind, a very limited recreational activity for black youth. You couldn't learn, and you couldn't participate in activity, particularly by laws and particularly by efforts to other people from Placer versus Ferguson time period, who wanted to sit on a train in New Orleans to Brown versus Board of Ed almost 100 years later. You've got a big gap of access.
During the late 1950s, beaches and pools were the most violent scenes of racial prejudice. But there were safe havens for blacks to swim freely that appeared during the decline of segregation at colored-only reserved beaches, but these areas were in isolation. Today, the fear of water is so deeply rooted that the swimming culture has appeared to be non-existent and abnormal in the black culture.
I guess more of a traditional cultural perspective, it has been something that has been passed on from generation to generation in the black community, that as a people, we don't swim. That's just something we don't do. And once that has been become part of the black family socialization process, then we begin to believe that, oh, okay, well, as a black person, it's just understood that I don't swim, so let me go play basketball. I don't swim, so let me go play football, because that's something that I'm supposed to do as a black person.
Are blacks genetically incapable of swimming? Is it a generational curse? Or are there underlying factors as to why African Americans avoid water?
The choice to swim has nothing really, in my mind, to do with one's limited desires, but it's exposure by the family. The family has to have the means and the resources, transportation to go. But in large part of society. There weren't pools and books that you read, of course, that talked about limited access to public swimming, separate but equal. The limitations on black people in that realm is really a driving force, the backstory to where we are right now.
It's just the jacket is there, you go.
Okay,
In many cases, black parents who never learned to swim pass this on to their children, resulting in a high number of drowning deaths from African American kids.
It was around 7 at night, and I was at my grandmother's house. It was me, my mom, my brother, my sister, my aunt, another one of my aunts, and like a few cousins. And my dad called my phone because my mom was outside on her phone. So my dad called my phone. He was like, "Where's your mom?" So I was like, "She's outside, she's on the phone." He was like, "Oh, tell her to call me ASAP." And like in his voice, I could hear like something was wrong. So I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like what happened?" So my mom was still on the phone, so I gave her my phone, and she was on the phone. Then she walked in like 2 minutes later, and like she came in screaming. She was like, "Michaela drowned." So everybody's like what? So she was like, "Michaela drowned." So they hadn't told us that she was gone yet, so we didn't know. So we waited for a little while longer, and my aunt, Michaela's mom, she was still in Georgia, but Michaela was in Florida with her dad. So my mom went to rush to my aunt's house to make sure if something happened, she would be there. So my mom left us there, and as she was pulling off, somebody called her and told her that Michaela was gone. When I found out that she died, I think it like hurt me the most because I was mean to her the last time I saw her. But she passed away, and then a couple of my friends in Miami, they called me and they were like, "Are you okay? We saw your cousin's story on the news." So I was like, I didn't know that it was that big to be on the news, things like that. So when my friends called me to tell me that they heard her story on the news, that's when like it really hit me the most, like she's really gone. When I found out how she died, my uncle took her to a pool party with one of his sisters. And my aunt from Georgia, she was kind of like, she didn't want Michaela to go, but she allowed her because she didn't want to be like a mean parent and say, "No, you can't go." So she allowed her to go. But my uncle's sister left Michaela outside of the pool, like outside at the pool unattended with like another child. And I don't even know if the other child could swim. But she left her there, and when she came back, Michaela was like at the bottom of the pool. So she doesn't know like what happened, if like Michaela tried to fight it, but when she came outside, she was at the bottom of the pool, like it was already too late.
With the rising number of tragic deaths of African American children and drowning, parents are recognizing the importance of teaching their child and learning themselves.
Good job, look at that! Oh my God! And she went all the way to the top. Super boy.
As a parent, I don't swim. However, I know the importance for my son, and I'm taking lessons myself. And so my anxieties of not swimming, I know not to pass it on to my child. I know a lot.
But for many low-income families in urban communities, there are issues with the expense of swimming lessons and an absence of accessible pool facilities, a problem that is worst among African Americans.
It has been a combination of African Americans just not having the access to swimming facilities, so the structural access has been denied, and then also the financial access to actually go and say take swimming lessons private lessons, if possible. That just hasn't been something that traditionally African Americans have been able to do.
The low participation of black families in swimming programs leaves many to question. Is it too late?
My brother is 10. He still doesn't swim. My sister is about to turn 18, and she's like terrified of water. And then especially after my cousin died, it's like we don't want to go in a pool. Sometimes it's a little hard. Like I might like pass a swimming pool, and it's like I imagine like her body being at the bottom of the pool. Like I can't save her. Things like that.
The cultural disconnect between African Americans and swimming has stolen the lives of several young children. But good or bad, the ties to water remain a significant part of black culture.
You think about Emmett Till, who's killed in Mississippi. Young boy, dynamics, it hadn't to do with swimming or anything, but where they find him in water. The bottom of the lagoon down there in Mississippi, with the barbed wire tie around his neck, tied to a tractor tire. Had been beaten badly. So you think about that. You think about all the association with water and black people historically.
The historical background of skilled black swimmers proves that there is hope for African Americans today. National nonprofit organizations like the YMCA have established swimming programs for children, teens, and adults. Ambassador for African American Swimmers, Cullen Jones, has dedicated his life and talents to teach minorities how to swim through motivational speaking, youth clinics, and private lessons. Jones hopes to prevent tragic deaths of children like 5-year-old Michaela and to reinforce the strong aquatic traditions of our African ancestors.